Recently, I built a real-time chat website using WebSockets and Django channels to do like the WebSocket real-time chat stuff. Now, this video is technically the last video in a full-length course that I built on teaching you how to build this real-time chat website. There's like, I don't know, 23 hours worth of content, so it's quite like a long, extensive, detailed course. I show you everything from, installing Django, installing Python, all the way to the very end, which is where I'm going to show you how to deploy it to production. Now, this video is going to be very long and probably quite difficult for people who have no experience with, back-end server-side configuration, stuff like that. But it's going to be long and detailed for a reason. Setting up a real-time chat website with Django backend, Django channels is pretty straightforward in development, like when you're working on it locally on your computer. But when you go to push to production, there's quite a bit of difficult, tricky things that you need to configure, and there's not a lot of information out there on the internet showing you how to configure these things. And especially if you're coming from a background that is not web development, you are going to have no idea how to do these things, and you're going to have if you were to do it on your own, you'd have a hard time finding the information. So I made like a really, really detailed document. Also, I'm going to go through that document in this video, so you're going to be able to, definitely do it, even if you have zero experience. So before we get started, let's quickly look at the document that I'm going to be going through in this video. It's very, very detailed. Essentially, I built like myself a document to follow for this video, and it's going to double as a document that you can follow when you're going to like push your website to production. So let's just quickly go look at the document, and I'll like break down how I'm going to be doing this. So there'll be a link down below that will take you to this GitHub page where I published this document. It's just like a GitHub repository with a single file, and that's going to be the README. There's also actually images, but the images are just used for the README. So there's the images and then the README. That's it. So if you go to the README, this is a very long document, as you can tell from the right-hand side over here. And the first section here is just like a legend telling you what is covered in the document. So let's go to the first section here, just what's covered in the document. So it says everything involved in publishing a Django website equipped with WebSockets using Django channels. I use DigitalOcean as the hosting provider. They have amazing products, documentation, and customer support. I highly recommend DigitalOcean. I very much do recommend DigitalOcean. They've been nothing but just a great service in every way that I've ever encountered them. And you can also get $100 free using this referral link. So if you just click this link, you're going to get $100 free. So everything that you do today in this video when you publish your website is going to be completely free. So let's talk about the specifications, the like system design, what's going to be installed on our server. First of all, it's going to be Ubuntu 20.04, Postgres database. We're going to use Django channels, DigitalOcean spaces to store the static files. So this is actually hosted through AWS, but you can set it up through DigitalOcean. Very convenient. We're going to be running the Django project as a WSGI application using gUnicorn and systemd on the server. Configure Nginx to proxy pass to gUnicorn. So this is like a security step. Configuring the firewall, again, a security step. The Redis installation and configuration. We're going to be using Redis as a messaging queue system for Django channels to manage the messages from the WebSockets. We're going to use ASGI for hosting Django channels. So that's similar to WSGI. It's the asynchronous version of WSGI. I'll talk more about that in the video when we actually set it up. But basically what you need here, you need one application to run the Django application. So that's the WSGI. And you need a separate kind of tool to run the WebSockets, to host all the WebSocket traffic and everything. And that's going to be through this ASGI application. Then we will deploy Django channels with Daphne and systemd. So that's how we're going to run the ASGI application. Similar to with the WSGI application, this uses gUnicorn and systemd. We're going to be using Daphne and systemd to run the ASGI application. This stuff is actually this will be the most complicated stuff right here. This is, if anything, is the thing that would be difficult to find information on the internet about. That's this section right here. So starting the Daphne service, writing a bash script that tells Daphne to start, and then configuring systemd to execute that bash script when the server boots to tell it, hey, start Daphne, and then Daphne starts the ASGI application. And then finally, we'll purchase a domain so that you can actually like see your website at a domain, and then we'll encrypt it with HTTPS or use Let's Encrypt to set up HTTPS on the server. So that is going to be everything. It's kind of like a all-encompassing video to host your website. Even if you weren't using Django channels and WebSockets, this kind of first stuff here is, just as valuable, setting up any server that doesn't use WebSockets. So hopefully this document will help you. Hopefully the video will help you. Let's get started. By the way, if you're just watching this video and you didn't watch my course on how to build this real-time chat website, you can head on over to codingwithmitch.com, and there's a course there that you can take a look at. So if you go to codingwithmitch.com and you go to courses up here, it's this course right here, the real-time chat messenger. As I said, there's like 80 episodes or something like that, or 80 lectures or something like that. It's quite long, but it's because I show you how to build everything. Yeah, it's 22 hours long. I show you how to set up the authentication, how to register accounts, how to add friends, remove friends, everything to do with a friend system, how to do private real-time chats, how to, here's all the stuff here. So all this, you take a read here if it looks like something you're interested in, a friend system, a public chat room where anybody can go in and chat, one-on-one conversations, so like private chats, and then also real-time notifications. So that'd be like friend requests, private chat messages, and then finally the last part, which is the part we're doing right now, which is pushing this to production. All right. That's enough talking. Let's get started on this. So again, I highly recommend DigitalOcean. Go down below. There's a link in the description of this video to get $100 for free for DigitalOcean. It's worth it. Definitely by far the best service provider for any sort of your server-side needs that I've come across in my development career. So check out DigitalOcean, and I'm going to be using DigitalOcean in this video, so you kind of need to use it anyway. So after you register an account on DigitalOcean, you'll probably come to a view. I think the view will actually look like this. Let me just go to digitalocean.com, and I'll kind of try to go through this just as if you were going through it for the first time. Yeah, so if you don't have any projects, let me close this. If you don't have any projects, you're going to have to go to new project right here. Now, create a project name. I already did, but you can name it whatever. I named mine Open Chat Demo. You don't have to have a description. You can select a purpose. I selected class project / educational purpose, but if this is a real website for you, just select website or blog and then click create project. After that's done, you're going to have a project over here on the right. This is what it should look like other than this domain. Right now, you should not see anything in this kind of domain section. I only do because I've already added this domain, and we're going to come back and talk about this later, so don't worry. Again, I'm going to explain every single thing that we do. So if we refer to the document, this is actually the first step. So create a DigitalOcean droplet with an SSH login. And then here's kind of the steps, and I have images for you. So you're going to want to create a new droplet, set the configuration, get an SSH key. This is very important to have an SSH key to make your server more secure, make it way harder to log into. And then you log into your server and doopity-doopity-da. So that's what it says in the document. You can follow the document or just watch me do it on video. So let's do it on video. So you want to go up to create up here and go to droplets. We're going to create a brand new DigitalOcean droplet, which is like creating a new system to, host something. I'm selecting Ubuntu 20.04. Choosing a plan, just a basic plan. We don't need anything fancy to do this. I'm going to choose the $5 a month option. So very, very cheap. We have just as a fun fact, I believe my website, codingwithmitch.com, I think I only use the $15 a month option, maybe even the $10 a month option. And I get between, 1,000 to 2,000 users a day, and my server has absolutely no problems at all. I probably could double or triple that and still use this $10 or $15 system. So these systems are great. They're cheap. You don't need much to run a website, at least a basic website anyway. So $5 a month. Not going to use block storage. We're going to select data center. So wherever most of your traffic you think is going to come from, select a data center close to there. I'm just going to leave it at New York. We don't need VPC network. We don't need additional options. Now we come down to the authentication section. Now this is actually very important. So you don't want to use a password login because then people could just try to SSH into your server infinitely and just keep trying passwords. And if they use an algorithm or a machine to try and crack that password, they're probably going to get it. Unless you use, some crazy strong password, but that's still not a good idea. A better idea is to use SSH because then you have to have a key on your local computer to even try to get in. So this is the much more secure way to do it. So you're not going to have an option here that says choose an SSH key. You're just going to have an option that says new. So click on new SSH key here, and you can follow these instructions, but I guess I'll go through it with you. So what it wants you to do is open up a command prompt. So I'm just going to open up, a Windows command prompt, and I'll increase the font here so you guys can see a little better. So open up a command prompt, and you're going to have Git installed on your computer, like GitHub, Git, the command line interface for GitHub. If you have that installed, your Windows computer will be able to do this command here, ssh-keygen. And then it'll ask you some questions, and you got to fill out this information. So enter a file in which to save the key. So by default, it's going to get saved there. That's fine. I'm just going to click enter and say sure. Now you want to enter a password. So this is very important. You need to remember this password. This is the password that you're going to use to log in, and it gets tied to your SSH key. So now it gives some information. It says I generated that key for you. So now we can go and get that key. So let's go into, where was it? C, I think it was in users and Mitch, and then .ssh right here. And then, so there's that SSH key that I generated right there, IDRSA. Now the naming of this is not tied to the key itself. So like you could rename this. I could do like OpenChat demo, or whatever you wanted to name it. I'm going to name it OpenChat demo just because, I don't know, just because that's what I'm doing. I'm doing a demo, and I don't actually like to keep it in this directory. What I like to do is I'm going to cut this. I'm going to go into another directory, and I have an SSH directory here in my D directory. I'll create another folder here. So just Control N, and I'll do open, I don't know, open chat demo, I guess. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to paste those keys into this folder. Now it's also a good idea to save a copy. Actually, it is almost mandatory that you save a copy. So what I'm going to do is Control C on there, and then I'm going to go into like an external drive, like my Z directory here, which is an external drive that I have on my computer. Again, I have an SSH directory here. I'll do the same thing. Actually, I think I copied the folder, so I don't need to do that. I'll just delete that new folder and paste that in. So then I have a copy of that SSH key. Because if you lose this SSH key, you will not be able to get back on your server. It will be literally impossible. You would have to rebuild your droplet and start from scratch. You would lose it completely. You won't be able to get on your server. So definitely make sure to save a copy. So that's the key that you're going to use to log in. Now, if you follow the instructions here, it says you'll be prompted to do this stuff. You enter a password. You add the public key, and then you want to copy that public key into here. So copy your public SSH key and paste it in the space below. So let's go to the public key. The public key is this one. It's a .pub file. If you go to edit with Notepad and open this up, let me bring my Notepad over here. It's just a big, long string of characters. Just press Control A to copy it and then paste it in here. And then you want to enter the name, and you can enter any name here. It's just a name to differentiate the key. So you can say like I'm going to say OpenChat demo because that's what this key is for. So add SSH key. Now that's going to add that SSH key to my DigitalOcean profile. You can see that it's saved here now. So now that's the one that the server is going to get booted up with, and that's the one that it's going to expect when you try to log in. So there's the SSH key. I don't think we need anything else. You can choose a name to name your system. I'm just going to leave it like that. Add some tags. That's just for organization. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to leave that empty also, and then select a project. So OpenChat demo. Enable backups. That is always recommended. It automatically creates backups of your droplet in case something goes wrong. You can log in and say reset my droplet to like 2 days ago or whatever, in case you do something dumb or something happens and you lose your server, or something goes wrong in your server. So now create the droplet. DigitalOcean is going to build that for you, and we'll be ready to move on to the next step. So the next step is logging into your droplet with SSH and FTP. So what I like to use to log into my servers is this software called MOBA Xterm. I'm going to click this link and it'll take me to their website. So if you click here, it's free. You can just go get MOBA Xterm now. The reason I like to use MOBA Xterm is because it has an SSH and FTP in the same window, and I'll show you what I mean. So if I open up MOBA Xterm, here it is right here. If I was to log into a server, it will show the FTP over here on the left and the console over here on the right. So it's really convenient because usually these two pieces of software are done separately, but I like this because it does it together. So I suggest using MOBA Xterm. It's free and it's awesome. So I use it. So now we want to log into our server. So you can log into your server by going on to session here and go SSH. And now we need our IP address. So we go to DigitalOcean for that, copy that IP address, paste it in here. We want to specify a username of root, go to advanced SSH settings, click use private key. Remember, we need that private key to log in. Now I'm going to click that little search button there, and we want to look for that private key. So OpenChat demo, and the private key is this one right here. So the .pub file, it'll be, you know, the name and then .pub. That's the public key. We want the private key, which is this one right here. So clicking on that, and then click OK. And now it's going to try to connect. So it says password for the Open SSH private key. This is that password that you entered when you built that private key on Windows. And now it's checking it, comparing it to your password, seeing if it all lines up. If everything's good, you should see what I'm seeing right now. You can see I'm logged into the server as the user root. You know, I'll actually increase the font here for you guys so you can see a little better. So hopefully that is a little bigger for you guys. I couldn't figure out how to increase the FTP over here, but at least the console, the terminal font is a little bigger. So this is the software I like to use. The console is in the middle, and then you have the FTP over here. So you can drag files in, you can browse the directories in the server. It's just like a very convenient way to do your server management stuff. So the next step here is install the server dependencies. So these are the things that you need to execute to have your server with all the things it needs to run the application. So I didn't write any notes here. I just kind of wrote out all the raw like commands that we need to do. This also includes like setting up the Postgres database. You can see here I am installing the Postgres, installing Postgres. We're gonna create a new user for our Django project in the Postgres database. Basically, you know, installing everything that we need. So what I recommend you doing is exactly what I'm going to do in this video. I'm going to go through each one of these dependencies and literally just copy paste them into the server terminal. So the first thing we're doing here is we're changing the password. I don't know what the default root password is. Maybe it was that password. I'm not really sure. Either way, I'm just going to change it. So I'm just typing a new password here. That way I know what the root password is. We need that because we're going to be jumping back and forth between users, between the root user and the user that we create for the project. Now run sudo apt update. So just copying that, putting that in here. It's going to update your server with a bunch of different dependencies. When that's done, then we want to install Postgres. So that's this one right here. So when it's done, it looks like it's done. By the way, I'm right clicking to paste in here. If you press Control, if this is your first time using like a terminal, pressing Control V does not paste. You're going to need to right click to paste. So I just right clicked, click enter, yes, to install that. And it's going to install a bunch of stuff. As soon as that's done, we're going to log into the Postgres database. So this might take a second. I'm just going to fast forward the video while I wait. All right, looks like it's done. Now what we want to do is we want to log into the Postgres database. So sudo u Postgres PSQL. This is me logging into the Postgres database as the user Postgres. So now that I'm logged in, I can, you know, do things to the database. So the next command that we're going to do is create the database DjangoDB. This is the database that we'll be using for the project. So I get the notification, created the database, good. Now I want to create the user Django with the password. This is very important that you copy exactly what I'm doing here, because this user Django is going to be the same one that I create on the server that has access to our application. So I'm creating a database user named Django, and I'm creating a server user named Django. I haven't created the server user Django yet, but we're going to do that after this. So right now this is just strictly with Postgres. So create that user. Next, we want to set some parameters, set some properties to this user. So create role Django, set client encoding to UTF-8. We want to alter role Django, set default transaction isolation to read committed. We want to alter the role Django, set time zone to UTC. You can set time zone to whatever you want, doesn't matter. These ones are kind of optional, actually, doesn't really matter. This one is very important. Grant all. So these three are kind of optional, not that important. This one, grant all privileges on database DjangoDB to Django. That's very important because I'm saying allow this new user that I've created named Django to have access to this new database that I created, DjangoDB. Then \Q to log out of Postgres. So I'm no longer in Postgres. I've done everything that I needed to. I created the database, created the user, gave the user permission to use that database. Now the next command here is sudo pip3 install upgrade pip. So this is to download and install pip, which is a Python like package installer. Python package installer. I guess that would be a way to explain it. Now we're going to use pip to install virtual environment onto the server. We're going to be using virtual environment on the server just like we use it in development. you have to activate the virtual environment, install the dependencies, that kind of thing. It helps keep all of the dependencies isolated. It's the same thing as with the development environment. You keep the dependencies isolated from the rest of the server. Otherwise, the dependencies get installed server wide. So sudo apt install git. So that's how to install git, because we're going to be using git to pull a repository from git to actually install the code onto the server. So make sure to do that. This one looks like it's going to take a while too. So I'll fast forward the video to when this is done. The next dependency is this one. This is actually a dependency that I had to find because of a CV2 issue. So the Python package OpenCV2 we used to do some image kind of manipulation in the website. I was having issues with it. It was causing a random error, and I found that this dependency fixed that error. So just kind of a heads up, this is a dependency that you need, or CV2 is probably going to give you some issues. Now we're ready to create this user Django in the server. So just calling add user Django, that creates a user Django. I got to give him a password and then retype the password. Full name doesn't matter, room doesn't number, work, home, other, nothing matters. Just click yes, create the user. This is the user that's going to host the application. They're going to own the application. Now we want to log in with that user. So su Django. So just type su Django. Now notice over here it says that I'm logged in with the user Django. Now do cd home Django. So cd home Django, copying that. That's going to go into, so you can actually navigate with FTP also. Like if you go to home and go to Django, notice, so this directory was just generated when I added that user Django. This directory would not have existed otherwise. The user Django only has access to this directory. They can't access any other files on the server. So the only ones are going to be in this folder, and this is where we're going to create the Django project. So cd into home and then Django into the only directory that this Django user has access to. Now we want to make a directory for the project. So make directory coding with Mitch chat. Copying that, pasting it in, and you can change this. Like if you're going to create some other project, you would obviously change it to whatever project name you need. But keep in mind that all of the configuration files in this video that I configure for, Daphne, Unicorn, Nginx, Systemd, all of these things are going to be based off of the file paths that I build in this video based on my code. So you're going to have to be very careful if you change any of these names, because you'll have to change them in the configuration files also. So just keep that in mind. If you want to not have problems, do exactly what I do. If you want to maybe have problems, don't do what I do. Consider yourself warned. Now we want to navigate into the directory. So cd coding with Mitch chat. Now in here, I want to create the virtual environment. So virtual env. I'm going to call it venv. That'll create that virtual environment. So now if I was to go and refresh this, notice we have that coding with Mitch chat directory that we created, and there's also a virtual environment that's now created. And if we go in here, we have all of those kind of dependencies that are required to make a virtual environment work. So just like we've done locally with their Python projects, you create the virtual environment, and that's where we're going to run our project in. So now we want to activate the virtual environment. So source venv bin activate. So on Windows, what you would do, I think, is it's scripts. It would be scripts and then /activate to activate the virtual environment. On Linux or Mac, it's source, and then you reference that activate file. So it's a little different, but does the same kind of thing. Notice, same thing as on Windows, we have that venv over here in brackets now, meaning that virtual environment is now active. Now I'm going to make the source directory, so make directory source. I'll just paste that in, and that's going to be the directory that we install our Python project into. So I'm going to go cd source, and now if I refresh this up here, you can see there's that source directory. Now inside of this directory is where we're going to use git to pull the project source code files to. And that's the next step in the document. So it says publish your project to GitHub. Oh yeah, so the way I built this is I assumed that you have your own repository, your own project somewhere. You're not going to use mine. So the first step is, if you don't have this on Git, you need to get it on Git. So that's what we're going to do now. And then we're going to pull that code from Git, and you'll get it on your server. So first step here is log into Git and create a new repository. So I'll take you through this, even though I'm assuming probably most of you know how to do this already. So here I am on Git. I'm going to increase the font size so you guys can actually see what's going on here. So go up here, go to new repository. Now you'd want to, like, if you're following my video, I suggest you calling this coding with Mitch chat, just to keep it like the same naming convention as me. But if you don't want to, you can name this whatever you want. It doesn't matter. It's just that you're going to have to keep that name. You're going to have to be wary of the naming conventions when we do the configuration files later. So just kind of keep that in mind. So create the repository, go create repository. I'll just build it anyway, even though I don't need to. When that's done, now you want to follow these instructions. So we need to initialize this project for Git. So I'll go through this with you too. So if we let's go to a Django project. My Django project is right here, Chat Server Playground. What you would do is you would go into the project, go into the source directory, right click here, and you got to have Git installed on your Windows computer, by the way. And then that'll give you access to this Git bash. You can also open up a command prompt. It doesn't matter. Like if you wanted to open up a command prompt here instead. By the way, if you didn't know what I just did there, I just clicked in here and you CMD, and then you click enter, and that's going to open a command prompt to that window. Now, what you would want to do in here is you would want to write git init. I've already got a Git repository initialized in there, so that's not going to do anything for me. But for you, it's going to set Git up in that repository so that you can use it. So you can use the command prompt, like I said, or you can use the Git bash. I prefer the Git bash. So if you have Git installed, like I said, you just right click in here, go to Git bash here. It just gives you some like extra coloring. I don't know. I just think it looks better. So once you have that, what you'll want to follow these instructions here. So you'll have to do git init, which you already did. Then you want to do git add all. So just type exactly what I'm typing, even though it's not going to do anything for me. Then do git commit m first commit. Make sure that's in brackets. Now this is doing nothing for me, but it's going to commit all of your code for you. And then you want to do git remote. Well, actually, you can just copy it. So just do git remote add. You don't have to do this step. This just changes the name master to main. That's all it does. Now you want to copy this git remote add origin. Whatever that URL for you is, paste that in, click enter. I'm not going to click enter because I think that might screw up my repository, so I'm not going to. And then do git push u origin master or main, if you changed it to main, then do main, but if you left it as master, then do master. And that will push your code to Git. After you do that, it should take a few seconds, but you'll be able to refresh this page and you should see your code on GitHub. Once you have that done, then we can move to the next step. So the code that we publish to the server is going to be slightly different than the code that you have in development because of different configurations. Like we're going to use DigitalOcean Spaces and AWS to host your static files. Some of the settings in there are going to be different. It's just going to be slightly different for production as opposed to development. So what I like to do, like right now, what you'll have is you'll be on. You don't type what I'm typing right now, but you'll be on your master branch. So right now I'm on my master branch. I just switched to it. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to build a new branch for production. So to do that, you can do git checkout -b and then call it production or prod or whatever you want. I called mine prod, as you can see up here. So type that, click enter. That's going to create a new branch for you. Then you want to do git push origin prod. So make sure that after you create that branch, do git push origin prod. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a brand new branch that is exactly the same as your master branch. You know what? I'll just do it here just so you can kind of see. So checkouts, I'll call it production instead of prod. Or whoops, I need to do -b production. That'll create a new branch and switch me to that branch. You notice right here it says production, and then just do git push origin production, and then that will push that new branch to your repository. So now you have two branches that are exactly the same. One is called production, one is called master. So we're gonna stop with the Git stuff right now, and we're gonna move on to the next step in the document, which is hosting the static files with DigitalOcean Spaces. So like in development, we kind of just had, here, I'll actually show you, I'll bring it up on the screen. So in development, we had like the static directory, the static CDN, media CDN, and also a media directory. In production, we don't have these. The only one we're gonna have is static. Static CDN isn't gonna exist. Media CDN isn't gonna exist because those directories are going to be on AWS or DigitalOcean. So now we want to set up DigitalOcean to be able to do that. So that's the next step now that we're going to work on. So like I said, we're going to be using DigitalOcean Spaces to do this. And DigitalOcean Spaces uses AWS, but you can do it all from DigitalOcean, which makes it more convenient. So if you go to the Manage section over here and go to Spaces, you want to create a new space. So you can see that I have a whole bunch here. You know, I have one for Open Chat, Open API. The Coding with Mitch one is actually, I built Coding with Mitch like 3 years ago, and Spaces didn't exist then. So Coding with Mitch is actually just using raw AWS. But yeah, we're going to use Spaces. So what you want to do is just go up here to create, go to Spaces, and we can create a new DigitalOcean space. So select a data center that's close to where you live. I'm going to choose New York. You can enable a CDN. You don't need to use a custom domain. Just enable it. Doesn't matter. Now do allow file listing, restrict file listing. So only users with API keys will be able to, or only applications with API keys will be able to access your static files, which is what you want. They're hidden unless they have, you know, like the proper credentials to access them. Now choose a unique name. I called mine Open Chat Demo. I've already created this. That's why it's telling me that the name already exists. But I suggest following me exactly. So call yours Open Chat Demo also. Actually, you know what? It might not work because I took that name. So you're going to have to call yours something else. But just be wary that when we do the configuration stuff, that it's going to matter. So wherever I do Open Chat Demo, make sure that you do whatever your unique name is. Now select a project. I'm going to do the Open Chat Demo and then click Create Space. Now, of course, I've already done this. So I'm just going to go over to my space. Or have I created it? I think no, I deleted it actually. Oh yeah, I deleted it so I could redo it for you guys. Okay, so I'm going to do Open Chat Spaces. Okay, I'll do Open Chat Demo Spaces. That's right, I deleted it. Oh, that exists too. Open Chat XYZ Spaces. There, that's fine. Or Open Chat XYZ Demo. Let's do that. There we go. So I'm going to create that space. Just make sure everything's okay. Yep. Create that, and we'll move on to the next step. So it said that everything was created, but it's telling me that I got an error. I don't think there actually was an error. I'm just going to go and click on Spaces over here, and boom, there we go. There's my new Open Chat XYZ Demo Spaces. Now that our space has been created, it's right here. We want to go over to Manage Keys because we're going to create an API key to access these static files. So just click on Manage Keys over here. That's going to take you to a page where you have an option to use token/keys, OAuth applications, or access. Choose tokens/keys, and then scroll down and you see the section Spaces access keys. You want to click on Generate a new key. You can see here I have a bunch of keys already. I'm just going to reuse the one that I have here. Now I'll just create a new one. So I'm going to go to Generate a new key. I'll call this Open Chat XYZ Demo to match the name of the space that I created, and then click check mark. So that will generate a new key for me. Now it's going to generate a secret key and a public key. You need to record these. Make sure you don't leave this page until you get this. So click copy on the private key. It doesn't matter what you do. Like you can open up a notepad file and then paste in the private key. Also open up a notepad file and paste in the public key, and just leave that open because we're going to be using those shortly when we do the DigitalOcean Spaces configuration. Now the last step to kind of setting up spaces before we go and do the Python and the Django stuff, go into your space. So go into Spaces over here and go to Open Chat, the space that you created, whatever it's called. And inside of here, we want to create a new folder. So go to Create Folder and call this Open Chat Static. This naming, again, is important. We're going to be needing this in the configuration. So if you call it something different, just make sure that you are aware that you called it something different because it's going to be different in the configuration files. So now in the document, it says the next step is update the production branch. So what we're going to do now is go to our source code and update that production branch so that it has all the necessary changes to reflect what our application is going to look like in production. So I'm going to open up Sublime Text here, and remember that on Git, I have my master or my production branch selected right here. And remember, you've created that branch, you git checkout B production, you push that. Now we're on that branch and we're going to make some changes to it. So following along with the document, the first file that we need to change is settings.py, and you can just copy this stuff. So copy this stuff. It says at the top of the file, this is what we need to add. So go into Chat Server Playground, go into settings.py, and at the very top, we want to change this right here. So right where the secret key is, we want to paste over it and paste in this stuff. And I'll actually move these imports to the top just to kind of clean this up. So now you're probably wondering, what is this config thing? So what we're doing is we're actually separating out some of the important properties that are going to be variables within this file into this kind of configuration file. So I'm saying debug now equals, we want to get that debug parameter from this configuration file, and the code for it is debug. And I'm going to show you how to set this up, so don't worry. Now, allowed hosts, you want to put your IP for DigitalOcean. So go to the DigitalOcean console, go to your project, and copy that IP address. So for me, that's 134.209.116.22. So copy that, go back to here, and paste that in for your IP. Later, when we set up a domain, you're going to have to add your domain there also. Now, the root URL configuration, this will be the project name.urls. So right now, this already exists in the file. If you search for it, it says chat server playground.urls. Make sure to delete that since we're going to be defining it up here. The WSGI application, same thing. Delete that. The ASGI application, delete that, because those are all going to be parameters that are going to be set up here. And then also delete this other allowed hosts. So those are the first kind of changes to the settings.py file. So now go back to the document, and it says here at the bottom of the file, paste in this stuff. So I'm highlighting all of this and going back to Sublime Text. Now scroll down to the very bottom of the file and paste over top of everything from the data upload max memory size all the way down. I think, oh no, maybe just below that. So below that variable, and then paste in that. So what this is the AWS configuration, the DigitalOcean Storage's configuration for DigitalOcean Spaces. So we have, these parameters are required. We need the AWS access key, the secret key, the storage bucket name, endpoint URL, S3 parameters, AWS location, static files, and then all the static files setup stuff, static file storage, default file storage, and then the email backend stuff too. So this you'll have to change also. Oh yeah, so also if you want, like when someone resets a password, you need to have an email that sends the users an email. So what you should do is go to Gmail, create a brand new email, and you're going to use that for sending out emails to people. So like literally right now, pause the video, go to Google, create a new Gmail account, a brand new one, and that's the email that we're going to configure to send password reset emails. And then base URL here, again, you want to put the IP address. So go to the top and copy that IP address again, go down to the bottom and paste that in. And again, we're going to be setting up HTTPS later. Just right now, we're going to be using HTTP. So Control S on that. And if we go to the document, the next file that we need to update is manage.py. So this one, the only thing that we need to change here is actually the project name. So I'll copy this entire thing and go to manage.py, but I'll point out that there's not actually that much we need to change. The only thing we're changing here is right here, it says chat server playground, and I'm replacing that with a variable. So if I just paste this all in, the only thing that I changed is that this was replaced with a variable. Also, we have this other import, because again, that's gonna be part of this configuration file. We're putting the project name here. So Control S on that. Now go back to the document and scroll down. So now we want to create that configuration file, and that configuration file is named settings.ini. So let's go into Sublime Text, and inside of the root directory, so the source here, right click, go to new file, Control S to save, and call this settings.ini. So this is a configuration file that's going to hold all of those constants that I was referencing in the other files. So let's Control C on that to copy it. Now come in here and paste it in. So debug is set to false. Secret key, we need to put the secret key in here. So if you go to settings.py and scroll to the very top, we can grab the secret key, which it looks like I copied over. Okay, my bad. Good thing we have a Git repository with the backup. So go to your Git repository, the one that you just created at the beginning of this video, and you're going to want to copy the secret key. So go down to, for me, that's going to be the production branch, and I can go to chat server playground, go to settings, and grab that secret key that I accidentally saved over. So once you have that, go to settings.ini and paste that in here. Make sure there's no like strings. This is not a string. It's just a raw value. So make sure this is not surrounded in quotations. Now you want your AWS kind of configuration stuff. So first is the access key. So you save that in your notepad file. The access key is the short one right here. So copying that, pasting it in. Now we want the private key. So copying that and pasting that in. The storage bucket name. So this one, you can go to DigitalOcean to check what that is. So let's go to DigitalOcean, go to Spaces. The bucket name is this right here. So OpenChat XYZ demo. That is the bucket name. So copying that, pasting that in, putting it here. The endpoint URL you can get if you go to settings and scroll down, and it's right here. So this is the endpoint right here. So just press copy and just go in here and then paste that in. I think it's okay to leave the HTTPS. Like if you paste it in, it doesn't have HTTPS, but I think it's fine if you leave with the HTTPS in front. So try that, and I'm pretty sure that'll be fine, but we'll come back if it doesn't work. Now the AWS location is the folder that you created. So going back to DigitalOcean Spaces, this is going to be this folder right here, OpenChat static. It looks like that's the same, OpenChat static, so that's good. And now these email settings are the email that you just created. So remember when I told you to go to Google, create a new email, you're going to want to put that email address in here, and then also the password to log into that email. Because what's going to happen is our project is going to send out emails from that email. So it needs to be able to log into it and then send emails to people when they reset passwords. And then of course the project name is Coding with Mitch Chat, but that'll be whatever your project name is. But again, if you don't want to have any issues, just use what I'm using, because then you're guaranteed to have this work. So Control S on that, and now let's go back to the document and see what is next. So this step is update the directory names. So in our original code in the master branch when we built this project, we were using Chat Server Playground. So notice right here, this is Chat Server Playground. We want to rename this to Coding with Mitch Chat. Coding with Mitch Chat. We want it the same as what the project name is right here. That's why we're renaming this. Again, if you don't do this, you're going to have problems. The directories need to be exactly right for the configuration files to work. Okay, next on our document is update header.html. So the WebSockets will be communicating. The WebSockets use a different application. As I said at the beginning of the video, the Django project is run as a WSGI, and the sockets are run through ASGI, and they're run through port 8001. So we need to make sure that all of our WebSocket connections use port 8001 in production. So if we go to header.html, snippets, so header.html, scroll down to where we configure the WebSocket. Need to make sure that this is commented in and this is commented out. So we're using port 8001. And for all the other files, like if you go into, chat or not chat notifications, if you go into like the public chat or the private chat, those ones are already configured. Like if you open up this and you scroll down to where our WebSocket is set up, we have some if-else logic here that is telling it to use the correct port if it's not in debug mode. So we weren't able to use that logic in header.html because there isn't like a template that we're getting values from. So we have to just make sure that this is using port 8001. So Control S on that. Now let's go to the next part. So we need to add jQuery to this project. This is actually funny. When I was building the course, I couldn't figure out why jQuery wouldn't work sometimes. And I'd have to go to the master branch and then go back to the development branch that I was working on to get it to work. Now I know why. It's because when I first built the master branch, I got a version of Bootstrap that had jQuery. And then by the time I went to go build the course, I had a version of Bootstrap that did not have jQuery. And I couldn't figure out why. I assumed they were the same, but they actually weren't. So anyway, we need to get jQuery. You can go to this cdnjs.com. And notice here I said, don't get it from getbootstrap.com. They have a slim version, which is not what we want. And that's the version that I was using during development, which is why it wasn't working. And I had to switch back and forth. Anyway, you probably didn't even know that because I would have cut it out of the video. But this is what we need. So copy this, just go down here and copy all of this jQuery stuff. Now go into base.html. So open base.html, scroll down to here where I am getting, looks like I actually already added it. So yeah, go here. You won't have this in here right now, but you'll want to paste in those two things, jQuery min.js and then jQuery.js. Control S on that, and now I can actually use jQuery, and jQuery will work on the production server. Now we need to move some images around. So going to the document, we want to add default profile image.png to the static directory. So inside the media CDN is a file named default profile image. Move that into static. So opening up our directory inside of media CDN, Coding with Mitch, there's that default profile image. I'm just going to press Control C on that and go to static, Coding with Mitch, paste that in there. So now that's part of that. And we can actually delete a bunch of these folders now. So we don't need media CDN. I can delete that. We don't need static CDN. We can delete that. We just need the static directory. Also delete media. If you have media in here, delete that. We can also delete all the migrations. So if you go into each one of these, if these have an initial migration, delete that. So in each one of these Python, in each one of these apps, delete the 0001 initial migration. I'm not sure if this is actually required. I just kind of did it because I thought I'm going to be applying all the migrations on my server. So let me just, start with a clean slate. So just quickly go through all these. There should be only a couple migrations anyway. So just go through all of these, delete this migration. I think I got one left in personal. Go migrations. That doesn't even have any. Okay. So that should be good. The next step is requirements.txt. So this is very important. You want to have the same dependencies, the same requirements that I have, because we need them to run everything on the application. So I say make sure to copy my requirements.txt file so you have all the necessary dependencies. By the way, this one is going to be different than the one you would have had it in the development course when we were building the course. I've added some extra dependencies because these are ones that we needed in production, like this gunicorn PSY cope G2 binary that's needed for Postgres, Django storages, which is needed for DigitalOcean Spaces and AWS, Boto 3, same thing, DigitalOcean Spaces, and Python decompile, which is needed for the settings.ini file. All of these I've added to this requirements file right here. So if you click this link and you get this requirements file, it's all in here. So you're going to want to just copy all of these, go to Sublime Text, go to requirements.txt, and just paste it in, and Control S to make sure that you have all of those requirements. So very, very important. You could have also just installed the requirements file that we had during development and then done pip install this, pip install this, pip install that. But I've added them to the requirements.txt, so you won't need to. So now we come to an issue that I ran into. So this is a weird problem. I was actually talking to Justin Mitchell from Coding with Entrepreneurs, and we were trying to figure out what was going on. This is some weird static files issue. So you can read this, but I'll explain it to you here on video. So if you go to our public chat, for example, and go to public chat room and scroll down to the element where we set this default profile image. So right here, profile image source. Remember we set that dummy image and then we load the actual image using our preload image function. Well, this is really weird. If we use a static Django template kind of shortcut here to load a static file, it doesn't work properly if you use it in JavaScript. What ends up happening is, I don't have an example. Let's go to the document. So say the URL for this image was this. It'd be some domain, and then if it's using DigitalOcean Spaces, it's going to have a signature. So it would be @signature. Well, if you use JavaScript to load the static URL in production, what actually happens is it changes this and symbol into its HTML code. So it would change it to and amp and then this semicolon. If that happens, it makes the signature invalid and it doesn't work. So none of the images would load, which is kind of really funny. It's just a weird thing. So what you actually need to do is you need to come into, this is actually the only part, I think, the only place that we need to do it. You want to call .replace on here, and you want to replace the and symbol or the and AMP and then semicolon, replace that with and. That's all you need to do. It's just a weird thing. JavaScript changes the string into its HTML, it changes the @ symbol or the and symbol into its HTML code. So we just need to change it back, and then everything is fine. Oh, actually, that's not right. We need to use regex to find all of them. So what this would do is it would just replace the first one, but we want to replace all of them. So I'm going to delete that and do slash and AMP semicolon, do slash and then G. That's the regex that says find all of these, so and amp semicolon, and replace all of them with this. That'll replace all of them instead of just the first one. So that will fix our signature when we use this static Django shortcut for the images, for any static file actually. And now one last thing that I forgot to do when we were developing the course is go to account.html and scroll down to where the profile image is. So in this view, what we want to do is we want to show the default image, or show that, that dummy image. So I want to change this to static, and then do, coding with Mitch / dummy image.png, just like we've done with all the other images, like in the real-time chat. We want to show that default image and then call preload image. I just forgot to change that, so just do that and then search for preload image and uncomment this right here. That way the profile image is going to get asynchronously loaded while it shows that default one. So that should be it for the code changes for production. Now open up your git bash console again, do git add all, git commit -m, and just do, I don't know, production updates or something. Production updates, doesn't really matter. These are just comments. It's going to say a whole bunch of stuff. Now git push origin production, that's going to push everything to your remote Git repository. And we are ready to move on to the next step. The next step is getting the code onto the server. So we need to open up Moba Xterm, log in with or switch to the user Django, activate the virtual environment, go into the CD, the directory source. All of these things we should have already done. So going into the project, you can see here I have the virtual environment activated. I am using the user Django, and I'm in the directory source. If you haven't gone to the source, just go CD home Django / coding with Mitch chat, and then source. Now we need to initialize a Git repository. So do git init. That'll initialize that. And now we want to pull from our Git repository. So depending on what your Git repository is, you're going to want to do git pull the URL that you can get from Git, and then do the branch. So in this document, I have git pull the repository and then prod. So assuming that the branch is named prod, but you saw at the beginning of this video that I called it production. So whatever your branch name is going to be. So I'm going to copy most of this, paste this in, do space, and then do production. So I'm saying pull from this repository and pull the production branch. So again, you're going to have to change this URL to whatever your repository URL is. If you don't know how to get that, you just go to Git, you go to the repository, you click on code, and then you copy this link right here. That's the URL that you want. So once you do that, click enter, and now it's going to pull that branch, and it says that I'm going to be on the production branch now. So if I refresh this, now we have all of our code for the production branch right here. Now that we have all the code, we want to install the requirements. So we want to run pip install r requirements.txt. So pasting that in, it's going to go through that requirements file and install everything that we have added in there. Now this might take a few minutes, or a few seconds anyway, probably not more than a minute. So I'm going to fast forward the video and come back to when this is complete. All right, looks like it's done. So now we can actually do python manage.py collect static. So I'm going to copy this, paste it in, python manage.py collect static. Looks like there is an issue. Improperly configured, the secret key setting must not be empty. So that means if we go to Coding with Mitch chat and we go to settings, and I open up this file, I thought we added that secret key. Maybe I forgot to commit the changes. Let me look at the code, because remember I accidentally pasted over that. Did I not commit it? Oh, I added it to the settings.ini file, but I never added it to settings.py. Right. So I want to do secret key. So secret _ key, and then set that equal to config, and then the name here is the secret key. So that should be, let me just make sure that that is spelled correctly, secret key. That should be good. Oh, it's telling me now that, because remember when we changed the name, I changed it to Coding with Mitch chat. So we need to actually copy this whole directory. So remember when I changed this to Coding with Mitch chat, but before it was Coding with Mitch playground. So this settings.py file that I have open here is different. So I'm pressing Control A and then Control C to copy this whole thing. And now I'm just going to close it. So no, we can just close it, and then I'm going to open up the correct one. So if I just go into Coding with Mitch chat, open up settings, Control A, and then paste it in. Now press Control S. Now we should be good, and we have our secret key defined at the top. So we've made some code changes. So this is actually a good learning experience because now we can go to the Git console again, or the Git command line, and do git add all, since we made some changes. Git commit m, whoops, I meant to do git commit m add secret key as a comment. Now git push origin production. So that's going to push that new code to the Git repository. Now we can go on the server and we can pull those changes. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this same command, git pull. So git pull the link and then do the branch again, production. And that should overwrite everything. And so you can see the changes here. It says coding with Mitch settings.py, that has been changed. And if I open up settings.py now, so if I refresh this and open up settings.py, we should have our secret key in there, and boom, there's our secret key. Okay, so that was actually a good example of like, what do you do if you make some changes like locally on your computer and you want to push them out to your production server? That's what you do. You do the changes locally. You would do your testing and development. If it happens to be like something that can be tested in development, you push it to your Git repository, just like I did here. And then you update the code on your server, just like I did. So now let's try python manage.py collect static again. Yes, I want to overwrite the static files. And so what it's going to do now is if we go into like our static files, go into here, what it's doing is it's going through all of these directories and it's going to push all of these files out to DigitalOcean Spaces. So it's taking a second here because there's, a bunch of files in here. There's lots of Bootstrap files, lots of collections files, Cropper.js. But as soon as this is done, what we can do is we can go to our DigitalOcean console and you'll be able to see all of those files hosted on AWS or DigitalOcean Spaces. So there it says it's done. 397 static files have been copied. So let's go to DigitalOcean and let's go into our OpenChat static directory. And now, boom, there we go. We have our admin files, Bootstrap, the Coding with Mitch folder with those 5 images, those like default profile image, the dummy image, couple logos. So yeah, all of our static files are now out here. Also later, like when users register, those static files, like for their profile picture, will also get stored here. So essentially what this means is our static files setup is complete and it's actually working, because you can see our images and all of our static files are actually hosted on AWS or DigitalOcean Spaces. So if you go to the document, it says at this point you can check DigitalOcean, which we just did, and our static files are there, so that's great. So now the next step is we want to check to see if we can run our project. So this is kind of like just a little check to see like if you've configured everything correctly up until this point. So let's do su root. Let me actually explain a little better. So what we're doing is just like in development, when we do python manage.py run server, we're essentially going to do the same thing right now, but on our server out on DigitalOcean. This isn't what we want to have like at the end of the day. We want to have like a service to run the application for us. But right now what we're going to do is just run it manually just to test and like see if it's working. So we want to log in with the root user. So do su root, and you're going to have to type your root user password that you added at the very beginning of this whole kind of process. Now we want to allow traffic through port 8000. So sudo ufw allow 8000. Now we want to go back to our Django user. So su Django. Now we want to activate the virtual environment. So if you're in the source directory, you're going to need to go back. So do cd ... If you do ls, you can list the directories that are inside the folder that you're currently in. So you can see I have source and virtual environment. So I can now do, now I can do source, virtual environment, bin activate. So I'm copying that. I'm going to paste that in there, source, virtual environment, bin activate. So now my virtual environment is now activated again. Now I want to cd into source, so cd source, and I want to do python manage.py make migrations. Now this is actually going to apply all of our it's going to build out the migrations that we're going to apply to our database. And it looks like we have an issue. Another thing that I forgot to change. So right here it says Coding with Mitch chat dev. So if we go to Sublime Text and we go to settings.py and you scroll down to our configuration for the database name is not correct. This is the database name for the database we were using in development. So we want to change this to Django_DB. Remember at the beginning of the video, when we started working with the server stuff, we built that Postgres database and that database was called Django_DB. So we need to make sure that we add that there. Also, I don't think the port is needed here, so you can delete the port. And this is now the correct database setup. If I was smart, what I would have done is taken this and moved it into the settings.ini file, which, you know what, why don't I do that right now anyway? So let's take these parameters, database name and database user, and go into our settings.ini file, do database name equals DjangoDB, do database user equals Django. And what else can we do here? We can do the password, database password equals password for that user Django, set that equal to password. What else do we need? I guess that is that's kind of like the most important things. So now we can just do equals config, and this will be database_name, and the same thing for Django. So database_user, and then this will be database_password. So now we're getting those from our settings.ini file, which is obviously the better way to do things. So Control S on that, Control S on that. Actually, you know what? You can even condense this even more. You could just like add this parameter here. You could take this config, add this parameter here, and this config, and add this parameter here. And we can just delete those. Control S to save that. Now we want to do the same thing when I made that mistake the first time. Now we want to go and do git add all, git commit m, update database config, sure, I don't know. Then git push origin production. That's going to push all of our changes out to production. Now we want to go back to Moba Xterm and do the same thing. So git pull and then the repository link. So let me just scroll up here and I'm going to copy that same thing. Git pull the repository and then production. By the way, if you're copying things inside of this console, you don't need to press Control C. All you need to do is highlight it. So I'm just highlighting that. I'm taking my hand off the mouse and then now it's copied. So now I just go down to the bottom. I'm going to right click. So make sure I delete this. Right click. That's going to pull any of the changes. It's telling me, okay, I changed settings.py. I changed settings.ini. Great. Now we can try and apply those migrations again. So Python manage.py, make migrations. There we go. Our migrations are working. All of our stuff has been generated. Now Python manage.py and migrate, and that will apply everything to our database. Now, if you go to the document, you want to copy this command, Python manage.py run server, and you want to run it at this IP and then port 8000. So paste that in, and now that's going to run the server just like we would be doing in our virtual environment. So now we can actually visit the server. So if you go to DigitalOcean and go to your project and go to the server, copy this IP address and just paste it up here and see if you can visit your server. Oh, and make sure to add port 8000. So your IP and then port 8000. So your application should be running. So notice here that you can actually see it. So this is like the first kind of test. Now, this isn't set up, like the setup isn't complete, but this is the first kind of litmus test to see if so far have you done everything correct. Now, the reason you can't just leave it like this is because we don't want to have to, run the server and have this consume the console every time we want to run it. Because for me to crash the server, all I have to do is do Control C. Now, if I refresh this, hey, look, our server is no longer running. What we want on our server is we want a service to run that for us. We want it to tell it to run the Django application so that we don't have to do this. We can just have it running kind of in the background by like an external service. And that's what we're going to use systemd and gunicorn to do. So the next step here is if we look at the document is we want to use systemd and a socket and gunicorn to run the application for us. What this will do is that way when the server starts or restarts, it's automatically going to run our application and our server or our Django app is going to, come up right away. So one way to kind of show you how this is going to work is run this command, gunicorn bind that IP address with the port and then codingwithmitch.wsgi. So if we come in here and we paste that in, let's see what happens. So it actually looks like I forgot to change a file. So right now it's saying no module named chat server playground. So if you go into Coding with Mitch chat and you go into WSGI, right here it says chat server playground. This again, see the directory stuff is very, very important. So I forgot to change this. So let's go to again, we're gonna have to make a correction. See, there's just so much opportunity to make a mistake in this stuff. So what you want to do here is do what was the import? Let me go into settings.py and double check. From decouple import config. So inside of WSGI, from decouple import config, and we want to add config here. So I want to do F for string interpolation, and then do config and do the keyword is project underscore name, I believe. Let me check in settings.ini. Where is it? Project name. Yeah, right there. So making sure that keyword is set, and then delete the chat playground. Also make sure that this is double quotes and this is single quotes. That's very important. So Control S on that. And maybe before I go, I guess that should be the last thing. I just wanted to maybe make sure if I made any more mistakes, but I should be good. It's actually strange that the server, it's because, so the server ran with before when we ran the server because it wasn't being run through gUnicorn, which uses the WSGI. So that makes sense. Okay, so now let's commit those changes like we've done before when we fixed our mistakes. So git add all, commit, I'll just say update to get this done, git push origin production. Now go to our server and we want to pull those changes. So coming in here again, we're going to do the git pull the repository and then production. So pulling that again, boom, we've got some changes. Now we're going to try that again. So gUnicorn bind it to that WSGI. So right now that looks good. We have no errors. And if we go to that same URL, so if I refresh this, boom, again, we have our application running. So what this shows you is it shows you that gUnicorn can run the application. Right now, it's not necessarily any better than doing python manage.py run server because it's still consuming our command prompt. It's not going to restart if the server restarts, so it's not necessarily better. But what we're going to do now is we're going to configure a systemd file to automatically run this when the server restarts and starts, so that we don't have to. So it kind of gets just run in the background. So that's kind of how this is going to work. So let's scroll down, and we need to create some new files. So the first step here is configure systemd to execute gUnicorn through a gUnicorn.socket file. So first things first, we need to su over to our root user. So su root and then type the root password. And basically the way you got to think of this is anytime you're editing anything inside of the Django directory, you want to be using the user Django because you want them to own that user to own the files. Anytime you're doing anything that is not in that directory, you want to be using the root user because those are kind of like global things that need to happen. Now the next step here is navigate to this directory. Now you can it doesn't matter, like you could do cd and navigate to the directory, or you could just go over to the FTP over here, which is probably easier. You just go in here and navigate to that directory. And you want to open up a file that's named, or you want to create a file. So click this little create file button and call this gUnicorn.socket. Now open up the file, open up that gUnicorn socket file. So it's going to open up this kind of window here. You can close this WSGI also. And you want to copy this code into that file. So if you copy this, paste it in, click save, and do autosave, don't ask me again. Now the next step here is create a gUnicorn service to run the WSGI application. So you want to create another file named gUnicorn.service. So let's go up here and create another new file. Click the same button, gUnicorn service, okay. Now copy in this code. So copy this exactly. And this is a very important, like all of the file paths in here, these need to match exactly, open up gUnicorn service, paste those in and just look at these. So this directory structure needs to match exactly. So if you've changed the project or changed any directory names, you need to make sure that you update these accordingly. Like I have home, Django, Coding with Mitch chat, and then source. If yours is different than that, you need to make sure you update that. Now I'm telling it what to execute. So I'm saying use gUnicorn and execute this command, bind Unix gUnicorn socket, and run the Coding with Mitch chat WSGI application. So I'm telling it to do what we just did right here. I'm saying do this thing that I just told you to do, but I want you to do it automatically. That's essentially what this file is all about. So save that. Go back, let's see what the next step is. It says sudo systemctl start gUnicorn socket. So paste that in, boom. Then do sudo ctl enable gUnicorn socket to enable that. It says created symlink. And so what it just did is it created a link from the service to that socket file that I just created. And that should be good. So now it's configured to start your Django application when the server starts or restarts. The next step here is actually some helpful commands. So like if you've done something wrong or you know, are trying to debug. These are just some like helpful commands that I found helpful through my experiences with GUnicorn and things like that. So first, this says this must be executed if you change the GUnicorn service file. So if you're playing around with it and like if your file doesn't work and you're trying different file paths and stuff like that, you need to make sure that you run this command if you ever change anything to make those changes take effect. If you ever need to restart GUnicorn, this is the command you can run. You can also just do service. I'll show you. You can also just do service GUnicorn restart. That will also restart GUnicorn. Also keep in mind if you change any of your Django code, like if I go to my directory or I pull the Git repository, if I change anything, I need to run this command for those changes to take place. So running that more often than not is generally a good idea. And then you can also check the status of GUnicorn. So we're going to do this right now. So sudo systemctl status GUnicorn, paste that in. This tells you if GUnicorn is like working or not. So if you see like, if you see green here and no red and no errors, you know that it's working. So that's good. And then the last command that I think you should know is sudo shutdown -r now. So that's going to restart your server. That is kind of like a last resort. Like if you're not sure what's going on, maybe code doesn't look like it's taking effect, just restart the server. Sometimes that's just what you got to do. So next we're going to configure Nginx to proxy pass GUnicorn. So if you read this, it says we'll be using Nginx as an HTTP proxy. It helps to protect our website from attackers, and you can read more about it if you click right here. So essentially this step is all about getting Nginx to work with GUnicorn and allow it to allow traffic through GUnicorn. So we want to navigate to this directory, etc Nginx sites available. So coming up to the top here, I'm just going to, you could have done CD and navigated to it that way, but I think using the FTP in this scenario is perfectly fine. Now the next step here is create a file named Coding with Mitch chat. So Control C on there. Now go up here to create a file, create that new file. Now open up this file and we need to edit it. So copy this code that you have right here and paste it into this configuration. And you need to change this to your IP address. So I'm going to go to DigitalOcean and copy the IP address, go back to that file and just paste in the IP address. Now later when we actually hook up the domain, the domain name, you'll also need to append the domain name to here, but don't worry, we're going to come back and I'll show you how to do that later. So pressing Control S on that to save it, go back to our document and let's see what's next. Now we need to update the Nginx configuration file. So the configuration file is etc nginx nginx.conf. So we're almost there. I'm just going to go up one directory. So etc nginx and the nginx conf file is that one right there. So open this up. And all we need to do is, if you look at the configuration here, is we need to tell it that I want to be able to allow uploading of files, because in our project, if you followed along with the course, you know that when somebody changes their profile picture, a temporary image is saved on the server so that it can be cropped. So we need to be able to, we want to allow large files to be updated to our server because of that cropping process. They need to be able to be uploaded. So I'm telling it that the maximum amount of memory that a file can be uploaded is 10 megabytes. So that's, open that configuration file up again. Go down to wherever it says HTTP, like right here, and just go to like the bottom and paste this in. It says client max body size 10 megabytes or 10 M. So paste that in, make sure that tab, I don't think it matters if the tab is correct, but it just kind of looks better. So Control S to save that, and let's see what the next step is. Next is configuring the firewall. So copy this command and now paste that into your terminal. I think that command, all of the stuff that we just set up, like the Nginx and GUnicorn configuration, that ties it all together with that command. Now do sudo nginx-t. What that does is it checks your Nginx configuration. So it says the configuration file is okay. The test is successful. So we know that everything's good with our Nginx configuration. Now we need to update our firewall settings. We need to restart Nginx first. So sudo systemctl restart Nginx, restart that. Now sudo ufw delete allow 8000. So that's going to change our firewall rules to not allow traffic through port 8000 anymore. And now do sudo ufw allow Nginx full. So traffic needs to go through Nginx, and then GUnicorn is hooked up to work with Nginx. So that's how it's kind of protecting our site. Now sudo systemctl restart gunicorn. You could also do system or service gunicorn restart. They're equivalent, it doesn't matter. And now we need to set debug equals false, but that's already set to false, so we're good there. Service gunicorn is the same, that just says that. And now restart the server. So let's do sudo shutdown -r now. So pasting that in, that's going to close the terminal for me so I can no longer access this. Now restarting the server generally takes, I don't know, I'd say like 30 seconds around there. So once that's done, we're gonna visit the IP address, making sure to get rid of that port 8000, and we expect the website to be working now. So there we go. It's been about 30 seconds, and as you can see, I'm visiting the IP address, and our website is live. So it is working. Our Django app is being served by gunicorn, and everything is working as it should be. Now keep in mind, we don't have like the WebSocket stuff set up. So if you went to like the top of this page, remember I talked about how we have like kind of this first kind of section here for setting up the basic Django application. So this stuff is now complete. Now we're ready to move on to like the arguably more difficult stuff, which is configuring Daphne to serve the ASGI application for our WebSockets to work. I mean, I wouldn't actually say that it's more difficult. It's just that this information was much harder to find on the internet. There's not a lot out there. So let's scroll back down to where we were at. So debugging. And the next step here is actually just some like tips for you from me. So here are some commands that you can use to look at the server logs. These commands are absolutely crucial to know. If your server randomly isn't working one day, this is how you start to debug it. I can't tell you how many times my server just randomly stopped working because of some weird thing that happened, or, you know, who knows? These things just happen, and you need to know how to debug them, because if you have no knowledge and your server doesn't work and you go into your console and you're like, okay, now what do I do? Where the hell do I even start? These are the commands that are going to help you. So take a look at these if you ever run into issues. Journal-ctl is generally the best. So like that journal-ctl is like a consolidated log where all of your server logs are going to go. So if you just write journal-ctl, that takes you to the server logs. And if you press Shift-G, that takes you to the bottom. So that's like the most recent server logs. You probably can't see them all that well, but you can see like these are all the logs for the server. So that's generally the place that you want to start when you're trying to figure out what's wrong. For my next trick, we are going to be downloading and installing Redis onto the server. And as this paragraph says, it says Redis is used as a kind of messaging queue for Django channels. You can read more about it here in the Django channels documentation. It's technically an optional parameter if you look at the documentation. I'm not really sure how it's an optional parameter because I'm not exactly sure exactly how Redis works. So, I mean, you can look up more if you want to, but just know that it's used for some kind of like a payload management system, I believe. You know, it's like a... Yeah, I mean, I don't know that much about it, so I'm not going to try and explain it. So check out the docs if you want to know more. We are going to be using it. So go to the document, copy this first line here, sudo apt install Redis server. So click it here, and lucky for us, it's much easier to get Redis working on a Linux machine than it is on a Windows machine. If you watched the course where we built the real-time chat website, you know that we had to use this kind of third-party library or third-party tool to get Redis to work on Windows, but with Linux, it's super easy. So now navigate to etc Redis, which is a folder that would have been just generated now that we've installed Redis, and open up this reddit.conf file. So it's a Redis configuration file. And what we want to do is we want to look for this text here, supervised no. So I'm going to press Control F in the document, and I'll pull up the find window here just so you can see. I'm going to find next, and I'm looking for this line right here. So we want to change this. We don't want it to say no, so I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to write supervised and system D. So it's supervised by system D. Now press Control S to save that. Click autosave, yes. And that's all we want to change in our Redis configuration. So I can close that. Now the next kind of step here is sudo systemctl restart redis.service. So sudo systemctl redis restart service. Now sudo systemctl status redis. So this is checking now the status of Redis to see if it's working. If you see kind of all green here, you don't see any errors, then we know that Redis is working correctly. Then just press Control C to kind of get out of that sort of status window or status output, and we'll move on to the next step. So Control C to exit, which we just did. Now we want to sudo apt install nettools. Honestly, I don't remember what this does. I remember reading about it, and I remember I did know what it does, but I can't remember exactly what it does. It's something to do with the Redis configuration. So now we want to confirm Redis is running at localhost and port 6379 by default. So we can, oh right, so netstat is a way to analyze Redis, I believe. That's what it was. It's a tool that you can analyze things on your server. So I just pasted in that command, sudo netstat -lnp grep redis. So it's looking for, I think, like services that have the keyword Redis. So there you can see that our Redis is running at localhost and port 6379, which is what we want, because that's the configuration that we're going to set for our Django project. So now we can, I don't think you need to restart Redis again, but I have in the document here that I'm going to restart Redis. So sudo systemctl restart Redis, just restart that service again, even though I don't think that was necessary. And now we can move to the next part, which is ASGI for hosting Django channels as a separate application. So from the Django channels documentation, you can read, or it reads, ASGI, Asynchronous Server Gateway Interface, is the specification which channels is built upon, designed to untie channels apps from a specific application server and provide a common way to write application and middleware code. So this kind of says, it's just like a little description about like what ASGI is in a nutshell, or why we use ASGI for Django channels. Basically, ASGI, you can think of it as the natural successor or the successor to WSGI, which is currently how our Django application is running. It's running through it as a WSGI application. So this is the asynchronous version, and it's kind of like, you can think of it as the new version, because Django is moving towards asynchronous. Everything is going to be asynchronous, and ASGI is one of the components of that. So also kind of an important thing in here, it says that the Django channels are built upon and designed to untie channels apps from a specific application server. So you kind of, we're running Django channels as almost like it's a separate application within our server. So like we have our Django project, and then we have the Django channels project. So it's kind of like two separate things, but we're tying them together so that we can use WebSockets in our project. So we need to create a file named asgi.py in this directory here. So we can just navigate to that. I'll just copy that. Actually, one important thing that I missed is you need to make sure you're authenticated with the user Django. Remember earlier I said anytime basically we're inside of this Django folder, anytime we're creating files, updating files, doing anything, we need to make sure we're logged in with the user Django. The user Django needs to own every single file within that directory, not the root user. Otherwise, the Django project will have troubles opening some files because it won't have permission. Because if the root user creates it and the Django user tries to use it, it's not going to work. So we need to do su Django to log in with the user Django. And then I want to make sure I create that file. So actually creating it with FTP, you can't do. Don't do that, because this is logged in with the root. And if you log in with the root and you create a file here, the root is going to own it. So what you want to do is you want to cd into this directory. So do cd and then into that directory. That'll take me to that directory. And now we want to use this command, cat >asgi.py. So what that'll do is that creates a file named asgi.py in the current directory that I'm in, and it opens it up so that I can edit it. So it says here as a note, Django must be the owner of this file. So we're going to copy this ASGI file stuff here, and now go back to our console and right click to paste that in. And this prompt is going to come up here saying, are you sure you want to paste everything in here? It's got multiple lines. You're going to say okay, and now you can see that that is pasted into the window. So currently I still have the file like open. The way that I want to save it is I'll press Control D, or maybe I press enter and then Control D, and then now you can see that I'm no longer in that file. So now if I was to refresh this, you'll see that file is now in here, asgi.py. Also, if I did ls, which is the Linux command to look at all of the directories or the contents of the directory that you're currently in, you can see that asgi.py is one of those. Also, if you want to look at like the permissions and like who owns the directories that you're currently in, you can do ls-l. Hopefully you can see that ls-l, and you can see who owns it, who has permission to use it, and then like what that file is. So very important here that it says Django owns this file. The root user cannot own this file. Now the next step is deploying Django channels with Daphne and systemd. So just like when we deployed our Django application in the WSGI, so if you go in here, we have our wsgi.py file, which gunicorn is calling to launch. So just like we use gunicorn and systemd to run that on our server, we're going to be using Daphne and systemd to deploy Django channels. We need to use Daphne because it's just the easiest way to deploy an ASGI application that uses Django channels. It was built by the people who maintain the Django channels code, so it's built to do that specific thing. So if you read this little paragraph that I have here, it says, gunicorn is what we use to run the WSGI application, which is our Django app. To run the ASGI application, we need something else, an additional tool. Daphne was built for Django channels and is the simplest. We can start Daphne using systemd service, just like we did with gunicorn, so that it will start when the system boots. And it'll work kind of the same, similar to how we did it with gunicorn. So here are some references that I found helpful if you want to know more about like Daphne and how that works. So you can take a look at those if you want. Now we want to log in with the root user. So I'm going to do su root and type my password because we're no longer working in the kind of Django folder. Now we want to install Daphne. So apt install Daphne. That installs Daphne onto the server. Yes, I want to do that. Now I want to navigate to etc systemd into system, because again, we're going to create like a Daphne service file, just like we did with gunicorn. So I want to definitely draw comparisons to what we did with gunicorn and starting the WSGI application, because it's the same kind of process. Just instead of gunicorn, we're using Daphne. So now we want to create a file here, and this is going to be called daphne.service. So just like similar again, we created that gunicorn service. The only kind of the biggest difference here is the gunicorn socket. We're not going to be creating a socket for Daphne to run through, mainly because I couldn't figure out how to get it to work. So I have another way which we're going to use to run the Daphne service. So now open up daphne.service and go to the document here and copy this and then paste it inside of Daphne service. So essentially, if you look at this, again, very similar to what we did with gunicorn. It references the working directory, and then it says, okay, find Python, use Python to execute Daphne, and then tell Daphne to run our ASGI application on port 8001. Port 8001 is very important because all of the WebSockets, that's how they're going to be communicating, is through port 8001. So making sure that that is correct is very important. So control S or just save that. And now we can go to the next step. So we need to systemctl daemon reload, just like with gunicorn, we had to do the same thing. So typing that in. Now systemctl start Daphne service to make sure that the service is started. And now we want to do kind of a check. So we're going to do systemctl status Daphne service, typing that in, and you should see all green here, just like when we did the status check for gunicorn. Basically, if you don't see any errors here, you know that you did it right. So press Control C to get out of that. And now let's go to the next step. So starting the Daphne service when the server boots. So with gunicorn and the WSGI application, we created a gunicorn socket file. Remember, I just kind of told you about that gunicorn socket. And that tells gunicorn when the server boots to start. At least this is my understanding of it anyway. I'm not like a expert backend guy, so I'm not 100% sure if I'm saying this correctly. But I know that this gunicorn socket is what is telling this gunicorn service to run when the server boots. So the punchline here is I couldn't figure out how to do that with the Daphne service. So what I did is I ended up, you can see here in this paragraph, I couldn't figure out how to get it to work. So instead I wrote a bash script that will run when the server boots, which then tells the Daphne service to start. So it's going to do the exact same thing. I just couldn't figure out how to do it with the socket. So it works either way. It doesn't matter. So navigate to the root directory. So /root. So let's go into /root up here, and we want to create a new file named boot.sh. So boot.sh. Now open up boot.sh, and inside of here, we're going to paste the following. So just grab that, copy it, and paste it into boot.sh. This just says sudo systemctl start the Daphne service. So like I said, just writing a very simple bash script that is telling Daphne service to start. So now that we have this script, we need a way to tell this script to run when the server boots. So I can actually close both of these. We don't need those open anymore. Now let's go to the document. It says save and close. Now we might have to enable it to run as a script. I'm not sure if this step is actually needed, but it's better to use it anyway. Again, I didn't test if it didn't work if I didn't use this, so just use it anyway. So chmod u+x root boot.sh, just type that in. That gives that file permission to run. I'm not sure if that's necessary, like I said, but better to be safe than sorry. Just do it anyway. Now I have a little comment here that says, if you want to read more about shell scripting, I found this article helpful. So you can go check that out if you want. If you want to know more about like this, this little script that I wrote, little scripts that you can run on your server to kind of automate things. So check that out if you are interested. Next step is tell systemd to run the bash script when the server starts. So just like we did with the gunicorn service file, the gunicorn socket, systemd is what is telling it to run when the server boots. So we need to do the same thing, but with that bash script. So copy that path and let's navigate to that path. And we want to we want to create a new file named on_boot.service. And now we want to open up onboot.service and we want to copy the following into it. So just copy that. Notice it's just saying execute on start and it references that boot.sh bash script that we just created. So pasting that in, going to save that, and we can close this. Just save and close. So now run systemctl daemon reload, because anytime you edit any systemd files, you need to run that, just like we did with gunicorn, just like we did with the Daphne service. Now I want to start on boot. So sudo systemctl start on boot. That's going to start it. Now we want to enable it on boot. So sudo systemctl enable on boot, we want to enable it so that when the server runs, it will start. Now I want to allow Daphne service through the firewall. So UFW allow port 8001. And now we want to restart the server just to like apply all the things. And then we expect that when the server restarts, so here I'm going to restart the server. When the server restarts, we're going to check the status of onboot.service, and we should see that that is running as soon as the server starts, and we didn't have to do anything. So I'll come back in about a minute when the server is restarted. All right, looks like I'm in. I have restarted the server. Now let's run sudo or systemctl status on boot service. If I paste that in here, we expect to see all green, all success. Basically, if you see no red here, you know that the service started successfully. So that's great, because now we can also check to see if Daphne worked. So you could do systemctl status Daphne .service. Let's check if our Daphne service is running. Boom, excellent, exactly what we want. The Daphne service is running. And even if just for and giggles, we can do systemctl status gunicorn.service. Let's see if that one is running. Well, it looks like that one's not running. Well, I don't think that one has to stay actively running anyway. So I'm not 100% sure. That might be a problem, but let's pretend as though it's not a problem and just move forward. And I'll know where to check if later we run into an issue. But I think that just has to start. It doesn't have to continually run like the Daphne service, which needs to continually run. But I'm not sure, but we'll come back and we'll figure that out later. So next kind of is just a little heading here. This is where are the logs. So if you ever have any issues with if you do have any errors there with like those two status checks that we just did, if you want to know where the logs are for on boot service or the Daphne service, this is how you can find them. You can just use journalctl and filter for that service or filter for the Daphne service. That will help you debug your issues. So now we come to the domain setup part. So if you want to use a custom domain, which I'm sure everybody does, nobody wants their website to be running at an IP address, this is the step where we're going to do that. And also as a heads up, if you want to use HTTPS with your server, which we're going to cover down here, if you're using HTTPS, which again, everybody should use, it's a way to make your server more secure. It basically encrypts the payloads, all the payloads that get sent to your server, or sent to and from your server. So very important to use HTTPS. If you don't use HTTPS, many people just won't go to your website because it's not secure. So if you want to use HTTPS, you have to have a custom domain, and there's also some tricky stuff with Daphne if you use HTTPS, that you have to like reference the certificate in the service file when you start your Django Channels project. So there's some tricky stuff. So I recommend continuing to follow this video because trying to do it yourself, you're definitely going to probably run into problems. So let's get started. So if you want a custom domain, which everybody does, this section takes you through how to do that, just the heading there. The first step is purchasing a domain. So I like to use namecheap.com, as it says here. It's, any place, you can buy the domain wherever you want. It doesn't really matter. I just like to use namecheap.com. I technically have an affiliate link. I don't know where it is. They don't really pay me very much anyway, so who cares? So anyway, once you go to Namecheap, you can just sign in. Let me just sign in, and I'll show you how to purchase a domain. So you would want to go up to, I have to enter my authentication code. Okay, so once you're logged in here, you can see kind of all your domains that you own. You can see that I already own the one openchatdemo.xyz, which is the one that I'm going to be using in this video. But if you want to search for a domain, you could just search up here. So like if I was looking for, openchat blah blah.xyz, and also like the weirder your domain is, the cheaper it's going to be generally. Like, oh, that one's actually pretty expensive. Weird. Usually you can find ones at .xyz for really cheap. Oh, there we go. Yeah, see, this one's only $1.31 a year, which is awesome. So like I would recommend buying a cheap one unless this is going to be like a serious website for you. But I would say just buy a random cheap domain for like $1 or $2, and that's going to be better. Or it's going to be, this is just a demo. So why would you buy an expensive domain? So anyway, when you want to buy it, just go to add to cart and then go through the process of checking out. So if I go to checkout, if you want to use Honey, you can use Honey. You can set it to auto renew. I didn't because I'm only going to be using this for a demo. So I turned that off, and then just go down to confirm order right there. So I'm not going to buy it because I've already bought the one that I'm going to be showing you in this video. So yeah, buy your domain, and then we can move on to the next step. So how do I get to my account dashboard? So here's the domain that I bought, as I said, openchatdemo.xyz. So I'm going to be using that for the rest of this video. Now keep in mind that you need to do to set this up now, you need to point the DNS to DigitalOcean name servers. So once you buy it and you have it kind of in your console here, you're going to want to click the manage button. There should be a manage button here for me. So if you click manage and you scroll down to right here, name servers, you want to select custom DNS and do ns1.digitalocean.com, ns2.digitalocean.com, ns3.digitalocean.com, and then there'll be a green check mark that you click up here to save that. Once you do that, it could take, I think it took me about an hour to have it kind of ready to go. So we can move on to the next step while that is doing its thing, but keep in mind that this could take like some time. So just do this, and then we'll go to the next step, which is going to DigitalOcean. So you can follow the document. We want to point the DNS to DigitalOcean, which says right here. And now the next step is add the domain to DigitalOcean. So we would go to DigitalOcean, and you can tell here that I already have a new domain that I've already added. But if you want to add a new domain, I think you can just go up to create up here, and there's a domains/DNS section. So you would enter your domain, like if it was open chat demo blah blah whatever, you would, or .xyz, then you click add domain. I've already done that, so I added that one with openchatdemo.xyz, so I'm going to click on that, and then you should see something like this, but you'll need to point the DNS. So here you can see I have these 3 NS records, and they're pointing to ns1digitalocean.com, ns2digitalocean.com, ns3digitalocean.com. You just want to make sure that those are the same as the DNS records that you set up in Namecheap. Make sure that these match, and that should be fine. I think all of this stuff will be automatically generated when you add a domain, so you shouldn't have to do anything. So once you have this domain added, then you can go into your project, and it should be in the project that you set up here. So now, like I said, this could take some time. Like it took about an hour for mine to start working, but once it starts working, then you'll be able to go to like openchatdemo.xyz, and you'll see your actual server up in production. So mine isn't working yet because we haven't changed. Oh no, never mind. We still have to do the configuration stuff. So like here, you'll need to update. Yeah, the next step is update the Nginx configuration. So never mind, forget what I just said. You won't be able to like just visit it as soon after an hour. You'll have to wait an hour, but we still have to do some configuration stuff. So follow the document, Mitch. Follow the document. So the next step here is update the Nginx configuration because we have that kind of domain. So we want to go to etc Nginx sites available. So let's open up the console, go to etc Nginx sites available, go to this coding with Mitch file, and we need to add the domain up at the top here. So like for me, it's going to be openchat-demo.xyz, and then you just do a space. So in between these is just a single space. So single space, and then I want to do www.openchat-demo.xyz. So we have the IP address for the server, space, then the domain openchat-demo.xyz, then space, and then www.openchat-demo.xyz. So of course you would replace these with the domain that you purchased, also the IP address for your droplet. Then you can press Control S to save that, and let's go to the next step. So sudo systemctl reload nginx. So let me paste that in. Now we want to confirm that the nginx configuration is still good, and we can do that by doing sudo nginx-t. So if we do that, it says nginx is okay, test is successful, great. Now to edit the next file. So we want to go to our Django project, so navigate there, and we need to update the allowed hosts file, or the allowed hosts in settings.py. So let's navigate there, just paste that in, and go to settings.py and change the allowed hosts. So right now we just have the IP address, but now I want to add openchat-demo.xyz, and I also want www.openchat-demo.xyz. So now these are needed because of, if you watch the course when we built the real-time chat website with Django channels, remember when we set up our routing.py, if you go into routing.py, we have this allowed host origin validator. So this will only allow traffic to domains or IP addresses that are inside of allowed hosts. So that's why it's very important to add your domain here. Otherwise, the WebSockets will not work. So Control S on that to save it, and we can move on to the next part. It says, first of all, service gunicorn restart, because remember, every time we make a change to any of the Django files, so like we just changed settings.py, make sure to run service gunicorn restart, and that kind of just restarts your Django application. So now at this point, this is the point where you have to wait. So it says you can take some time, or it can take some time to see your website available at your custom domain. I don't really know exactly how long it would take. I personally waited about an hour and it started to work for me. So then how do you know that it's working? Well, you can, if you visit your website and you see this, welcome to Nginx, or you see your project live, that means that it's working. So let me go up here, and if I go to openchat-demo.xyz, let's see what happens. So right away, I see nothing is there. So I know that not enough time has passed yet. But you know what? It actually should work for me because I've already pointed my name servers another day and I've had my domain in there. Oh, I see the problem. It's because it's set up for when I did my original testing. So this IP address is not correct. So if it should work for you, I think, if you wait enough time, like the stuff that you've done is correct. I did something wrong. So if you look at my droplet, the IP address here is different than I have in my domain. So I need to make sure that that matches. So I need to edit this record, change that IP address, and edit this record and change this IP address. I don't think you'll have to do that. Like, you would have put in the correct information while you built the domain, so you're probably good. But that should be why I don't see the Nginx thing here. So now I will have to wait some time, I believe, because I've changed this configuration. So I will pause the video. Well, first I'm going to shut down the server one more time, just because. Sudo shut down rnow. And I'm going to pause the video and wait until I'm ready to move on to the next step. And you'll have to do the same thing. So I would just take a break right now, go eat lunch or half an hour or whatever, and then come back and see what's what. All right, boys and girls, hopefully you just took a nice little break and you're ready to move on to the next part. In order for you to move on to the next part, which is setting up the HTTPS, you must have your domain working. So notice right now, if I refresh this, if I visit www.openchat-demo.xyz, this works for me. I can see my website is live. If you don't see your website live, at least you must see Nginx is working. If you see Nginx, it means that your domain is working, but you have something wrong in your configuration. So if you see this Nginx thing, it means that yes, your domain is pointing to your server. It's pointing to the correct IP address, but there's something wrong with probably your GUnicorn configuration or something like that. But in order to advance, you must have this working. So just keep that in mind. Something weird also I want to point out is if I go to openchatdemo.xyz without the www, it doesn't work. I don't know why. I'm going to assume this is something to do. Oh yeah, see there. So it's automatically appending HTTPS. That's why it's not working. So if I got rid of HTTPS, then it works. So anyway, so it is working anyway. So let's go to the document and let's see what is next for setting up this HTTPS. So again, the first thing is don't do this step unless your domain's working, and I just showed you how to know that it's working. And the first step here is we want to install certbot. We're going to be using Let's Encrypt to automatically generate certificates for us. So let's open up the console window here, and I'll copy this command: sudo apt install certbot python 3 certbot nginx. So pasting that in. Yes, I want to install that stuff. Great. Now I want to do, you know what, I'm actually going to wait for this to finish. I'm going to clear the log because it's going to give you guys a better view. I realized I've been editing this video kind of as I go, and I realized when it's down at the bottom, it doesn't really give you a very good view. You know what, I'll make it nice and high up here. That'll give you guys a better view. So now sudo systemctl reload nginx. So sudo systemctl reload nginx because we just changed something with the nginx configuration. Now the next command here is make sure that nginx configuration is still good. So sudo nginx-t, just making sure everything is good, everything's all happy still. Sudo ufw allow nginx full. That should already be enabled. We did that earlier, so you don't gotta do that. Sudo ufw delete allow nginx http. So this is going to block standard HTTP traffic through nginx because we're going to be using only HTTPS. So sudo ufw delete allow nginx http. Now we want to obtain an SSL certificate. You'll need to replace it with your domain here and then -d and then your domain with a www. So I will copy just this part, paste it in, and then I want to do open chat-demo.xyz, then space -d www.open-chat.demo.xyz, and that should be it. So click enter. That's going to generate your certificate. You have to fill out some information, so I have to enter an email for this. So mitch@tabian.ca, hit agree, hit yes, and that's going to do all of that kind of certificate generation stuff. So waiting for verification, cleaning up the challenges, and looks like it's good. So now this question here, it says, please choose whether or not to redirect HTTP traffic to HTTPS, therefore removing HTTP access. Yes. So what that means is if someone tries to visit your website through HTTP, it's going to automatically redirect them. So we want to choose option number 2 here. Redirect all requests redirected to secure HTTP. So hit 2. Now that's going to do some stuff, and looks like it's all done. It's telling me my email address is invalid. I'm guessing that's because I have certificates for other things with that email. So I don't know. I'm just gonna move on. I don't think that really matters. It says that everything is working. Congratulations, your certificate is good. Blah, 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 blah. All right, so that's good. Now I want to move on to the next step. So we want to verify that the certbot is automatically going to renew our certificate every, I think it's like 3 months or something like that. So just sudo systemctl status certbot.timer, and let's see what it does. Does it tell you how long if you look at this? Trigger Saturday, November 14th. So, oh, it does every day? So only 11 hours? Okay, cool. Okay, so it looks like it does it every day. Or certbot runs twice daily. Okay. So it renews it twice daily. I don't know why I thought it was every 3 months. That's weird. Next is to update the cores in DigitalOcean, your core settings. So I'm not even sure how to actually explain this step, but we need to go to DigitalOcean and we need to go to our DigitalOcean spaces for this project. So for me, that's OpenChat Demo. Go to Spaces and go to Settings up here and go down to cores configuration. So these rules are processed in order, blah, 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 blah. Again, I'm not exactly sure what this is for, but I know it's necessary. HTTPS, now do openchat-demo.xyz, do it for GET requests. The header that we want to add here is, if we look at the document, I have a nice picture. So access control allow header. So access dash control allow header and set the max age to 600 seconds. Again, not exactly sure what that does specifically, but I know that I had issues and I was getting an error on my server and I added that and that fixed it. So just do it and everything will be good. So now let's go to the next step. We want to update settings.py because now we of course have a custom domain. So let's go to home, Django, coding with Mitch chat, and then into source, go to the project, go to settings.py. And also if you, looks like I actually already edited it. So I have OpenChat demo.xyz, OpenChat demo.xyz. So make sure you have those in there. Also, like the better way to do this would be to go to your local environment and change it here and then push those to production. Oh yeah, see, so I actually need to do that. So settings.py, I'm actually going to copy this. So make sure you do this in your development environment, save it, go to the Git go to the Git console, commit the changes, push to production, pull it. You know how to do it. We've done it several times now. So do that. Now let's go to the next step here, which is update the Nginx configuration. So remember, I've said several times that the Django socket stuff is run as a separate application, run as an ASGI application. So we need to tell Nginx to allow that traffic for that application, and it's going to be moving through port 8001. So kind of the same as how we configured Nginx to allow traffic, I guess, through gUnicorn to our WSGI application. We need to do the same thing for our socket stuff. So navigate to this folder, etc Nginx sites available. So let me open this up, go up here, paste that in, go to coding with Mitch chat, open up that file, and we can change this. Also notice here, now that we've done some of the SSL or the HTTPS kind of stuff, the certbot generated all of this inside of our Nginx configuration. Notice that this stuff was not here before. Before, all we had was this. So the Let's Encrypt certbot added all of this to our Nginx configuration. So it kind of automatically did a bunch of stuff. So what we want to add to this is this little code snippet, location, WS, and all of these settings. And the most important one here is proxy pass the local host to port 8001. So just copy this and paste it. You can paste it right here, just below this other location. So basically what this is, it's allowing our WebSockets to go through Nginx. It's allowing that traffic. Otherwise, Nginx is not going to allow the WebSocket stuff to work. So scrolling on down, now we need to update our Daphne service file. So go to etc systemd system. Make sure to save that to the Coding with Mitch Nginx configuration. Now go to etc systemd system, open up daphne.service, and we need to make some changes. So if you go to the right, this is much, much longer than it used to be. So I'll paste this in and then we'll take a look at it. So I'm just copying this, doing select all and pasting it in. The only thing that changed is this exec start. So it's still saying use Python to run Daphne, but this Daphne command is now totally different. And it's different because of the HTTPS configuration. Now, at the beginning of this video, I believe I said something about how HTTPS makes this a lot more difficult. This is basically the thing that makes it more difficult. This line of code was so hard to find anywhere on the internet. I could not find any documents that told you how to run Daphne with a server that was running HTTPS. It took me a very long time. So this line right here, this one line, I bet you took me like 8 hours just to figure out or something stupid like that. So I want you to appreciate this line that you have right here and the simplicity of being able to follow my document in my video. But basically the change here is that it's telling Daphne where to find the certificate to use HTTPS and how to go through port 8000 and blah, 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 all that stuff. So save that. Now let's go back to the document and we are almost done. The last kind of things we need to do is just create a super user and use the server. So let's do that. So I'll close this document and I'm going to do su Django and I want to cd into home / Django, cd into home, Django, and then coding with Mitch chat. And I want to activate the virtual environment. So source, virtual environment, bin, and then activate. And then cd into source and do python manage.py create super user, because we need an admin on our server. Currently we don't have one. So the email will be mitch@tabian.ca for me. Whoops, I accidentally did a space. At the end of that email. That's why it didn't work. Mitch@tavian.ca. Username will be Mitch. My password will be something super secret. Another super secret password. There we go. My super user is created. So we can now go to our server and hopefully everything is working. So I'm going to refresh. We now expect to see HTTPS. Yes, there we go. HTTPS is working. Also, if I go www, that should work the same. Also, if I was to just do like openchat.xyz, redirects to HTTPS. So that's looking all good. And I'll increase this so you guys can actually get a better view there. Okay, so let's log in. Let's try to log in with my user that I just created, that super user. So logging in, and boom, there we go. It appears to be working, although I'm not convinced that the WebSockets are working yet. So let me go to inspect and go to console. And no, our WebSockets are not quite working yet. So there's something not quite right yet. I don't know. I'm just going to restart the server just for good measure because we've done some changes. Sudo shutdown rnow just for good measure. You know, who knows? Sometimes. Oh, I need to su as root. So su root, change over to the root user, and then restart the server. Just because generally when you change things, if you see it not working right away, restarting the server is generally a good thing to try. So we'll try that. I think actually what it was is I bet you what it was is I changed the settings.py file and I didn't restart gunicorn. But anyway, let's see if this is working. All right, so it looks good. You can see the WebSockets now are no longer giving an error. The issue here is that there's an invalid room. And if you remember back from when we first built the application in development, we need a public chat room. So if you go to public chat rooms, currently there is no public chat room, and this one needs to be called general. So call this one general, create this chat room, and now the home page will know, we'll have a chat room to be able to connect to. So now this should work. And you can tell it's probably working because here it says that I have one user viewing the chat. And if I go to the console, you can see that there is no errors. Everything is working as it should be. So let's send a message. Hey, this is the first message. Let's send that. Boom, there we go. And it looks like everything is working at this point. The last kind of thing I want to check, just to double check and make sure, is I want to make sure that I can crop a profile image, because I know in development we needed a temporary folder to do that. So I'll just choose one of these images, and that's a problem right there, because that should have executed a crop. But let's assume maybe that was just something weird that happened. Oh yeah, so there we go. I refreshed it and it looks like maybe cropper.js just wasn't loaded yet or something because it was being loaded for the first time. Anyway, that looks good. Let's crop this image. It now should be saving a temporary image on the server, cropping it, and boom, there we go. It looks like it's working. So at this point, I think I can assume that everything is working as it should be. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know this was crazy long. Yeah, thanks for watching. I know this was very long, but there was a lot of things. There's a lot of things involved in getting this to work, and I wanted to make sure that I included it all in one video because some of you might not have watched my course, the real-time chat course. Some of you might just be people who are trying to get their WebSocket stuff to work. And now you have a document, you have a video, you have a bunch of examples of me screwing up on video and then how I fixed them on video. So yeah, hopefully you found some value in this. If you found value in this, if you enjoyed this 2-hour, it's probably about an hour and a half, I'm guessing. If you enjoyed this and it helped you, please go to codingwithmitch.com/testimonials. Leave a testimonial there and tell me how this helped you. If you're a member on my website, tell me how my videos have helped you specifically. Like, what is the specific job that it helped you get? What is the specific problem that it helped you solve? Maybe you had a problem at work. Like, what is the specific thing that I helped you? If you're not a member on my website and you're just some random from YouTube, just tell me that you think I'm a cool guy and I helped you out with whatever the thing is you're working on. Be as specific as possible. I like to see specifics. Also, if you're not a member on my website, consider becoming a member. If you go to codingwithmitch.com/enroll, this is where my membership is outlined. And I have a couple of memberships. There's 3 options right now, although this one's going to be going away probably pretty soon. I announced last year that I'm going to be increasing my pricing. So this founding member subscription is going to go away. So if you want to kind of lock in the pricing and be guaranteed to pay the same price that you're paying right now, this is the subscription that you want. It'll create a record in my database saying that you're a founding member. So no matter what, you'll only ever pay $240 a year or $30 a month. It works out to $30 a month because next year I'm probably going to increase the monthly rate to $40 a month. And this is Canadian, by the way, which is about $22 US. And yearly you'll go up to, I don't know, whatever 30 times 12 is. What is that, 360? 360 a year. So if you want a cheaper membership, this is the one to get for later on. One of the best things about my membership is access to, well, not only to unlimited access to all these courses. Every course I make, you get unlimited access to. You could also download the videos. So if like you go to any of these videos, any of the ones that are not free, if you go to any of the paid ones, I'm not logged in, but you can download the videos and watch them offline. Also, you get access to a Discord channel, which I'm in there every single day. There's, I don't know, if you go to the homepage, there's generally 50 people usually online, and they're usually really helpful people. Like I said, I'm in there every day answering questions and just chatting. So it's a nice little community. I really enjoy it. I get lonely working here in my apartment all the time, so I find that the Discord channel kind of wards off that loneliness. So that's also a nice benefit. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully this was helpful. Like if this is on YouTube, which I believe it is. Subscribe. Comment, give me some kind of engagement. Go down below and just say hi. Give me some kind of a comment or something like that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.